In little more than a month, General Napoleon Bonaparte has led his army on a lightning offensive that has swept across northern Italy. Piedmont Sardinia has been knocked out of the war. Neighboring Lombardy, for many years the center of Austrian power in Italy, is now occupied by France, and the once confident Austrian army has been repeatedly beaten and demoralized. Before continuing his pursuit of the retreating Austrian army, Bonaparte allows his men 10 days to rest, as they await 9,000 reinforcements drawn from Kellerman. Bonaparte's conquest of Lombardy and extortion of its citizens allows him to pay the army in hard cash for the first time in 3 years, greatly improving their morale. However, a difficult campaign still lies ahead for the French army. Within the well-fortified citadel of Milan remains a substantial Austrian garrison, which threatens Bonaparte's control of the city. Unrest is quickly growing among the fervent Catholics of the region, who despise their godless revolutionary conquerors, especially after the onerous French demands for money and supplies begin. Despite the unrest, Bonaparte orders the advance against Austria to resume. However, within hours of the French departure, insurrections break out in the vital cities of Pavia and Milan, jeopardizing the tenuous hold on northern Italy, and endangering the vulnerable French supply lines. Wasting little time, Bonaparte gathers Colonel Lannes's elite grenadiers and moves immediately to Pavia in order to crush the uprising. Lannes leads the assault, breaking into the town and overwhelming the insurgents, who are no match for his experienced soldiers. In order to discourage further revolts, Bonaparte makes an example of Pavia and allows the town to be sacked, sending a strong message across the countryside. Unnerved, the insurrections quickly lose momentum and disperse, for now. On the 28th of May, Bonaparte rejoins his main force as they enter Brescia and approach the new Austrian position. Led by the increasingly unpopular General Boileau, the Austrians are scrambling to establish a new defensive line along the Mincio River. Anchored by the fortresses of Peschiera in the north and Mantua in the south, the position seems formidable, at least in theory. However, Boileau's army of fewer than 30,000 men is once again spread too thin, garrisoning multiple fortresses and covering 4 possible river crossings along a 20-mile front. With characteristic energy and determination, Bonaparte devises a plan to distract Boileau and take advantage of the disorganized Austrians. He orders the collection of rafts and barges along the shore of Lake Garda, intending to draw Boileau's attention away from Borghetto, where the majority of Bonaparte's army will then force its way across the Mincio River to deal one final decisive blow. Before dawn on the 30th of May, the French vanguard marches rapidly south to Borghetto, where they are surprised to find the bridge only modestly damaged and defended by just a handful of Austrians. Boileau is unwell and has been totally fooled by French preparations for an attack near Lake Garda. His army, already dangerously overextended, begins to lose cohesion as it reacts to conflicting reports of French movements. Contradictory instructions from headquarters heightens the confusion, and ultimately, just 1 battalion is in position to oppose the entire might of Bonaparte's army at Borghetto. General Kilmain's advance guard arrives at the bridge and easily drives back the Austrian cavalry screen, who in their haste to escape reveal a hidden ford. Exploiting this opportunity, French grenadiers pursue the Austrians across the Mincio and completely disperse them. French engineers repair the bridge, and the main body of the army begins crossing the river. Augereau pushes north to attack Peschiera from behind, but he is driven back by Liptay's cavalry. However, the advanced guard in Serurier's division are more successful as they take Vallejo and cause the surprised defenders to scatter in panic. But as French units fan out to expand their bridgehead, Prince Hohenzollern, an Austrian general, arrives and rallies the scattered defenders for a counterattack. They fall on the lightly guarded French headquarters in Vallejo, catching Bonaparte, who is resting with a severe headache, by surprise. He is forced to flee, according to his own account, by jumping over walls and hedges, running with only one boot on, until he reaches safety. The counterattack is not enough, however, as French units begin swarming back into the town, forcing Hohenzollern's men to fall back. The Austrians launch further, uncoordinated assaults throughout the day, but are unable to contain the advancing French army. By late afternoon, the Austrian line is completely shattered, and Beaulieu orders a general withdrawal to the Tyrol. It seems as if the campaign is nearly over, with Beaulieu beaten, and only the citadel of Milan and the fortress of Mantua remaining in Austrian hands. Mantua, a long-established city of 25,000 inhabitants, is strategically located between the Alps to the north, the Apennines to the south, the plains of Lombardy to the west, and the prosperous cities of the Venetian Republic to the east. It has been a cornerstone of Austrian military strategy for over a century, sitting astride the main invasion route through northern Italy. It is located in an ideal defensive position, on a flat peninsula surrounded by lakes and disease-ridden marshlands. It is not only difficult to attack, but the lack of cover, abundance of insects, and thick mud create serious problems for a besieging army. Although well fortified, Mantua has been neglected for several decades due to the absence of military threats. The rapid advance of Bonaparte's army suddenly changes that. Field Marshal Joseph Canto d'Alore, governor-commander of the fortress, notifies Beaulieu of the many deficiencies of the city in withstanding a long siege. With unusual speed and efficiency, Beaulieu issues a series of orders to rectify these problems. He strengthens its initial garrison of around 2,000 men to over 13,000, supported by more than 300 guns. Ammunition, food, and other provisions are gathered to withstand a siege for at least 2 months, but fodder and wood remain in short supply. Unable to leave such a massive force in his rear, Bonaparte halts his pursuit of Beaulieu and turns his attention to Mantua. He intends to storm the fortress in the chaos following Beaulieu's defeat, while much of Mantua's garrison is still scattered around the countryside. However, as soon as the garrison learns of Beaulieu's sudden retreat, they rush back to the fortress. Bonaparte orders General Serurier to move south and assault the fortress's northern defenses. On the 4th of June, his division strikes at the San Giorgio suburb and overwhelms its defenders. But as the French continue their pursuit over the bridge, heavy fire forces them to fall back. Bonaparte quickly realizes that Mantua is too well defended for a direct assault to succeed, without substantial preparation. Moreover, he cannot spare enough men to both besiege the fortress and renew the pursuit into Austria. After 3 successive offensives over the past 54 days, where his army has covered more than 200 miles and won 10 battles, Bonaparte is finally forced to halt and begin the siege of Mantua. For now, the war enters a stalemate, with Austria rebuilding its armies in the Tyrol and Bonaparte surrounding Mantua. As the French armies in Germany begin their campaign against Austria, Bonaparte faces a predicament. Mantua must fall for him to resume the advance, but he has no heavy siege cannons with which to bombard the city and breach its walls. Some are tied down facing the citadel of Milan, while others, being transported by sea, are captured by an ambitious British captain, Horatio Nelson. Meanwhile, the Directory has been pressing Bonaparte to seize the wealth of the Papal States. Obliging this request, Bonaparte leaves the majority of his army to blockade Mantua, and joins the divisions of Augereau and Vaubois to begin a campaign into central Italy. But Bonaparte has no intention of conducting a protracted campaign. Instead, he looks for an opportunity to intimidate the weak nations of Italy into surrendering valuable resources and withdrawing support for the coalition. Taking advantage of a fortuitously timed peace proposal from the relatively strong Kingdom of Naples, Bonaparte cleverly agrees to an armistice, depriving the Papal States of their only meaningful source of military support. This accomplished, he begins marching south on the 15th of June. The army of the Papal States is small and antiquated. Without help from Naples, they are unable to resist Bonaparte's advance. Fearful of the marauding French revolutionaries, Pope Pius VI quickly agrees to a ceasefire, just as Bonaparte intended. In exchange for peace, the Pope relinquishes 21 million francs in silver, food, and priceless works of art. The other independent duchies of central Italy are similarly pressured into buying off the French invaders. Adding to the extortion of the central Italian states, an expedition under French General Vaubois marches quickly to Livorno, a focal point of British commercial activity. The speed of Vaubois' advance surprises the English merchantmen, resulting in the capture of goods worth an additional 12 million francs. This profitable campaign of plunder temporarily satisfies the government's incessant thirst for cash. Perhaps of even greater importance, the army of Italy also acquires more than 100 pieces of heavy artillery from fortresses captured along the way, which are now en route to Mantua. Meanwhile, the citadel of Milan finally surrenders on June 29th, after a 48-hour bombardment, freeing up even more cannon. With the submission of the Papal States and the accumulation of siege artillery, Bonaparte can now redirect his attention back to the Austrians. However, the fortress of Mantua continues to be a formidable obstacle. All of Serurier's attempts to approach the city have been vigorously repulsed, and Canto d'Elre conducts frequent sorties to disrupt and prolong the siege. On the 6th of July, the garrison launches a major raid, capturing supplies and clearing out trees and houses that obstruct their fields of fire. Within hours of this most recent attack, Bonaparte returns to the area. Hoping to avoid a protracted siege, he begins preparations to seize Mantua. In the classic tradition of Marshal Vauban, France's greatest expert on siege warfare, Bonaparte orders a series of parallel trenches to be dug in a zigzag pattern so as to approach the enemy's fortifications. To support this effort, he establishes several large batteries of newly arrived siege guns to fire on the city. Finally, he draws up plans for an all-out assault on the fortress. But progress is slow as Austrian artillery batters the French lines. On the 16th, the Austrians launch yet another successful sortie out of their southern gates, pushing back their enemy and gaining much-needed fodder, further stalling French efforts. Nevertheless, on the 17th of July, Bonaparte's assault on the fortress commences. However, low water levels prevent French ships from carrying out an amphibious landing, a vital component of the attack. Even worse, the primary land force that initially captures the San Carlo Fletches is thrown back by Austrian reinforcements. After 2 days of heavy fighting, the French assault is called off, and the soldiers are forced to return to their disease-ridden entrenchments, which claim even more lives. Compounding Bonaparte's difficulties, reports soon arrive that the defeated Austrian army in the Tyrol has been greatly reinforced. The dispirited General Baudieu is replaced by Count von Wurmser, an experienced and aggressive commander. His revitalized army will soon launch a major counterattack. Furthermore, Bonaparte's army is dangerously overstretched, and the Directory fails to provide additional reinforcements now that its main armies in Germany have gone into action. The army of Italy will soon be heavily outnumbered and facing the nearly impossible tasks of simultaneously besieging Mantua and confronting the Austrian field army. Bonaparte, however, refuses to fall back, and instead orders a massive bombardment of Mantua. If the garrison can be made to surrender before the Austrian field army arrives, Bonaparte could greatly improve the odds. The French heavy guns relentlessly batter Mantua. Thousands of shells rain down, setting houses ablaze and scattering its citizens. Life in the city becomes increasingly grim as buildings crumble and food grows short. In spite of this onslaught, the defenders remain defiant. A French assault on the 27th of July is repulsed, and counterfire from Austrian artillery pounds the French siege lines. By the end of July, it has become obvious that Mantua will not surrender, as the garrison receives word of Wurmser's advance to relieve the city. The situation is desperate for Bonaparte. Outnumbered and vulnerable, he is at risk of losing everything he has achieved so far. The first great crisis of the campaign has arrived.